School District Number 8 Board of Education meeting to order. And we'll start with a roll call starting at my far left. Richard Jacobson from Hebron.
Joe O'Connor, Hebron.
Kevin Williams, Hebron.
Michael Turner, Marlboro.
Matt Caterino, Marlboro.
Bob Swinsky, Superintendent of Schools.
Jane Neal, Business Manager.
Kathy Mund, Administrative Assistant.
If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, flag is to the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, brings us to item 3 on the agenda, public comment. If you have any public comment, just state your name and your town and then whatever comment you'd like to share. So comment at this time. Mr. Watt.
Good evening. I'm just going to pass these out as for references for what the Board of Selectmen are going through. But I wanted to just give you a little background on the resource officer and where we stand at this point in time. As you know, the voters, when they actually go to vote, only get to vote on the expense side. You don't get to vote on both the expense and the revenue portion. And last year, as you know, you had the resource officer in your budget, which was the $100,000, which was approved in the RHAM budget. But there wasn't anything in the Hebron budget at that point. This year, with conversations that Bob has had with Andy at the beginning of the year, when we got to do our first presentation at the beginning of March, it seemed like there was some more solid information of wanting to use Hebron to be the source of the resource officer, which then required the, at that point in time, required both the expense in the Hebron portion, which the voters were going to have to vote on, as well as in the RHAM portion as another expense for the voters to vote on as well. From our standpoint, having $100,000 just on the Hebron town government budget is about 20% to 25% of our increase, and that's about another 1.2% onto the points that we've already had. So we were a little kind of taken back when we saw this in March, the first part of March. So the thing that we asked Andy is, the first thing could we do from a financial standpoint, could we go out and look to find a way to fund this the same way we do for Parks and Recs. We have a Parks and Recs fund balance, which allows a lot of the volunteer groups and the programs for Parks and Recs to be able to be fully funded through the volunteer groups or through areas outside the taxes where people can come in and have their programs taken care of, but it's an expense and fully funded revenue portion that's offset. So our financial people worked with our auditors. The auditors were saying that if you can set up a RHAM resource officer fund balance, then you could set it up the same way as you did your Parks and Rec. What you could do is not have it go to the voters as part of the Hebron line on 100,000. Leave it just in the RHAM line like you did last year. And then when you're at the point where you know all your expenses and the revenue, then what it would do is go through that fund portion of it. So that was helpful. That meant that we didn't have to do it as far as going to the Hebron voters. They had it both in both of them. Makes it a little easier for us to explain it at that point in time. But I think logistically now, I think Andy just needs to work with Bob and the people, just making sure that, one, if you use a Hebron police officer, we're going to have to hire another one, and we're also probably going to have to look at cars. So we just want to make sure, from an expense side, that we fully know all the expenses before we make sure we cannibalize our own police force at this point in time. But I think that can be something that Bob and Andy can work out and then vet it as we go through the Board of Selectmen and you guys going forward. So I think we are feeling comfortable from a financial standpoint that you got a vehicle to make it work and make it easier to talk to the voters. And hopefully, if you guys want to go forward with a resource officer, you're also in a position where you can actually work that out logistically with Hebron. We're willing to step up and help you out as much as we can. And from a Board of Selectmen standpoint, everyone said that if you decide you want to go forward, we're all willing to support that decision if you want to go forward at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, report of administration. Bob.
So as with our prior budget sessions, there's no formal presentation. This is an open Q&A for any board members that have any particular questions of various representatives tonight, in this case of Jen for social studies and their budget. Start down the end of this. Amy, do you have any questions for Jen?
Not right this minute. Thank you.
Rich? Same thing. Nothing yet? Okay. Jim? Moving on at this time. Mike?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Manny?
It off easy tonight.
It's a little one, so.
Okay, I mean, given no upfront questions, just real quickly, is there anything in addition to what we've seen in the content, which you shared in your formal presentation, you think is important for the board to consider as we look at the expenses in the budget?
As you consider them, I guess our biggest concern this year, and our budget is quite minimal that we're presenting, is I am asking for one class set of the AP European history textbooks. Our AP numbers are up for all of our 3 courses this year, which I think is a testament to the RHAM students. We're very grateful to have the additional students taking it, but our current AP US history books are pre-2001 September 11th events, and the AP exam has changed. As of late, we had a free response question on the exam last year from like a 2008 event, and then another one on the 2005 Putin election in Russia. So our concern is our books are incredibly outdated, and I am only asking for the one class set so we can get them up to date. So we're trying to be very cognizant of the materials in which we photocopy for our students, but given copyright infringement, we're trying to ensure an equitable base. That is, everybody has a text that is updated, that does include I don't know, 2001 September 11th events and the U.S. relationship. I mean, just the exam itself has changed and it's much more modern, and our concern is that are we able to provide our students with the most appropriate resources that are legal to provide them. So that's why we're requesting one class set for the students, and that's really half of my budget is the one book. And we will do everything we can to purchase them pre-owned. We get a lot through Amazon. It reduces the shipping costs, but I'm asking for 27, but we have 33 students enrolled now. We have an additional section for next year. So given a rate of attrition of probably 3 to 4 students, we probably could make it work.
So given that, and obviously we're seeing this steady increase in participation in AP, so for a period of time, I would expect that wave to ride. But is there going to be a point at which we need to consider whether or not it would make sense at all to rent books versus purchase if we're concerned downstream of reduction in student population and no longer needing those numbers?
If we're looking to rent from a technology standpoint, we can explore texts that offer where you could purchase the right to the text online, but then it comes down to whether or not all students have equitable access to the technology to download it, whether it can be, do they all have a Kindle or an iPad? And certainly you can get some of the applications from the phone, but then you still have to upgrade the licensing fees for those, most likely on a regular basis. So, we've had the books now for 15 years. Our AP US history books are almost 20 years old that we're using right now. But it's certainly worth exploring, but we've jumped from 16 students last year to 33 this year. So it's becoming a lot more popular, as is our US history and our AP psychology class as well.
I get that, and the other challenging factor obviously is AP controlled by the College Board, so there's limited options.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions?
When it comes to mind about the technology piece of it, do you see, or would you like to see more of a one-to-one type thing with the technology? At some point we're going to have to cross this. I keep talking about this, but at some point we're going to have to venture into this stream of whether we get away from textbooks completely, or we get into, to technology and get with technology. So.
Correct. I mean, obviously, I think we would all love to see one-to-one for all of our students. And we can look towards purchasing the licensing fees, but they can expire, and you may have to renew them every 3 to 5 years. I mean, the textbook companies themselves have to get on board with it. I mean, they're becoming an obsolete business without offering the technology piece to it. I haven't seen it offered so much in the social sciences yet, as much as I've seen it offered in the math and sciences because of the additional programs that are offered with the textbook. So, I mean, it's certainly worth exploring. I don't know that within the next 3 to 5 years I see them transitioning, at least for the history texts that are available. Even accessing some of them on Amazon, they're not always like ones that we would approve, the upgraded editions for the College Board and so forth. So that's kind of where we run into a bit of a bind. But I mean, down the road, I suspect within 10 years, all of our books would be available online. I mean, we just can't keep, I mean, nobody can afford them. You can't charge $130 for a book and expect everybody to be able to pay for that. I think mine are like $120 now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Can you tell me where you're at with the, I guess they're books called The Good Old Days?
The Good Old Days, yes. We originally had asked for 75 copies. We're trying to encourage more literacy in our U.S. history that reaches not just our level 1 students, but also our level 2 and level 3. And we don't have a whole lot of sources for the late 19th, early 20th century. I mean, we've got a lot of political cartoons, we've got the Upton Sinclair stuff, but this was an opportunity for our level 2 and 3 students. I had originally asked for 75 copies. Dr. Sminsky and I met last week, and we agreed that we could probably cut it in half to 30. I think it's $14.99. I put the price, but you can buy them used online for even 1 cent, but then you have to pay the $3.99 shipping and handling through Amazon. And bookkeeping has been really gracious in literally purchasing all of our books that way, and it becomes cumbersome, but we've saved a lot of money. So the premise of that is just really to start encouraging with our lower learner students alternative sources, more literacy, just access to things additional to the textbook, to political cartoons, and just a different style of writing.
And what's the status of the ones that you have today?
I believe we have 6 copies left. So what we try to do in some of one of our level 3 teachers, he tries to do stations with them, but then the kids have to like pass the book. So it makes it a little awkward.
Okay. Any other questions for Jen?
Just one question. You mentioned piloting Google Classroom for the level 2 courses using Chromebooks. Is that Chromebooks that are part of this year's budget, or already exist?
It is my understanding that that was just wishful thinking. That is no longer in the budget.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your information. Next.
Next, Alexi Mitchell is here to answer the questions you might have from the science department. That is that one.
So again, I'll start down this end. Rich?
I'm just curious on the textbooks that you were looking for this year. Oh, it's part of that one, yeah. Oh, yeah, 4/22. AP biology.
The AP biology has been dropped.
That's been dropped.
Like classes are being offered.
It is, it's just not 30, it's 20, I think now.
Okay. So that's what makes sense now. On your textbooks, is there any ties to the Common Core that is needed, or is that sort of a?
There's definitely ties to the Common Core, but 3 out of the 4 textbooks are tied to AP more specifically. So by nature, AP is realigned with a lot of the Common Core skills. So yes, I guess is the short answer.
That was the only thing I had.
Joe?
Can you explain to me about the microscope and balance repair?
Those we've consistently done over the entire time I've been here to maintain the microscopes and the balances so we don't have to buy new ones, basically. So we have a company come in and clean them, repair them, add pieces, or recalibrate them. And we haven't had to buy any microscopes or balances since I've been here, which is about 7 years.
Did we do this last year?
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I guess a comment on supplies. I guess last year we didn't do any pre-buy. And our supply account was kind of low compared to where it's been. And is yours just trying to stay even, or are you trying?
Yeah, I mean, for the most
Trying to
part,
have any new initiatives?
for the most part this year, I am trying to stay even. We haven't crossed that threshold into the new national science standards, so what we did this year worked really well, and I'm just kind of trying to maintain that.
Okay. One more time, everybody good?
Can I ask a question? What will the adherence to the national standards, what's that going to look like as far as different kinds of supplies needed, or what is that going to look like?
I honestly don't think it's going to change the supplies that we're going to need. It's more about changing our curriculum or how we teach it. It might, we might enhance our technology component, but what we're doing now, we are integrating technology. Just might mean that we're doing a little bit more of that. I don't think you're going to see a really drastic change in instructional supplies when it comes to like lab materials or chemicals or those kinds of things are probably going to stay the same. I guess the biggest addition would maybe be if our AP enrollment goes way up, which we're possibly anticipating.
How many teachers do we have teach science in the middle school and high school? Are there any vacancies enough in there in the department?
Are there vacancies?
Yes.
For next year?
Yes.
Not at the moment. That changed.
No, I'm just curious about how many teachers you have.
There's 6 teachers in the middle school, and there's, 3 chemistry teachers, 4 bio teachers, 2 physics teachers, so that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 teachers in high school.
Okay. I thought I saw a vacancy. There's not a vacancy in science that I see in the book.
We talked about Mr. Schmidt. Remember, he was going to retire.
That's it.
Or send his retirement so that he would stay on 1 more year.
Okay. All right, we all good? Thank you. Next up.
Next is special education. We have a team tonight. We have Mr. Cerusi from the middle school, Mr. Leslie from the high school, Ms. Mooney, who is the coordinator of special ed, and we'll try to answer your questions about special ed tonight.
Okay. Special education. You can start this now, Amanda.
Okay.
Text with your glasses or something. That's what I looked at.
Heat. If you're ready, you can go, Rich.
I want to start with a high level one. It's just get a broader picture of where we're at and what are we needing to add since we're adding a lot of that general enough question.
So starting with maybe a summary of the key drivers that are impacting the increase on the special education budget.
Yeah.
I think the first thing to remember, excuse me, is that if you remember the budget is budgeted as a gross budget, it will be offset by revenues from the access sports grant and the IDEA grant. I think that looking at the budget, I think that you can see that the professional technical services is an increase because of tuition. We're up $36,000 in neuropsych services. That's because we see a number of students coming up to us with more severe needs and would require more neuropsychological tests. We're see an increase in private special education tuition for the students who will be outplaced. I think that if you look at us as a district this year, there have been more people that have been placed out of district, and then the $68,000 from out of district, out of state tuition is we have 2 students at a specialized school for dyslexia. One of the things we're doing is examining that to see if we can bring that program back to them.
And what's the likelihood of that happening?
I think that there's going to be quite a bit of work, Mr. Jacobson, because I think that we have to really write the program, develop it, and then obviously find someone to staff it. I like to bring programs back because one of the things that you can see by the budget is transportation is a tremendous driver of special ed for us. And we've had a good degree of success with the clinical day program that runs from grades 7 through 12 by bringing it in because those students ride the regular bus and there isn't getting ahead of expense. So we're very interested in bringing back programs where possible. But one of the things we're noticing is that some of the students have such severe needs that we're not equipped to handle them.
Is that something you think could be done before the new school year?
I'm sorry?
Is that something you think we can do by the new school year, or is that?
I don't know. I think that we're going to give it a try. And I think that that's the best I can say at this particular moment. We've had some staff by the way out to workshops to try to establish that dyslexia program here.
And then would that be off-site?
No, you will be here in the building. So again, the idea is to have the students ride the regular buses, so that there's no specialized transportation, and they come here for their program, and we can integrate them when possible, and then they go home on the bus as regular students.
So where can we save money on special ed?
Well, I think you can see we made an attempt. We've had a consultant in to examine, examine the speech program, and it was the consultant's recommendation that we reduce that position in speech. And then we looked at the aid allocation. Right now, we feel we can reduce the number of aides by 2. So that's a start at a special education and trying to examine its costs. It's not easy because, unfortunately, so much of what we do in special education is mandated. And I think one of the important things you need to remember, too, is that when we try to object to a placement or a program the parent wants, the burden of proof is on us to prove that the parent is wrong. So, and that's been something that the legislature has, that many of the professional organizations, let me put it this way, have lobbied the legislature to change, and it hasn't been changed. So, unfortunately, that's the way the law is, and one that we must obey.
Yeah, Mike.
Just to piggyback what the superintendent said, I mean, in the NASDAQ report on tab 8, you'll find special education trend report. We implemented the CDT program, I think at the middle and high school, over time with the idea of saving some dollars and cents in the board budget, sort of, if you will, what is cost avoidance. If you look at the trend line, I mean, we have a slight blip, but overall, over the last 4 or 5 years, it's paid off. So I don't know if, you know, that has an effect. When we talk about bringing programs back, we are trying to do, you know, lower that bottom line. And the only way we can do it is to bring personnel here, because it is more effective to pay salaries to teachers to do the work versus paying the cost of transportation, which could be a teacher's salary.
And to take that a little further, Ms. Mooney and I had a conversation last week about a program for a youngster. The transportation to the program was more than the cost of the program.
Yeah.
Where in this paper is our, it's all coming together. I'm just curious on what is the actual percentage increase of our budget that's due to special ed? You said
I haven't calculated it that way. I can go back and do it.
It'd be really helpful.
Well, yeah, I guess part of it is on this sheet that's in the book where total is $2 million. It looks like that's total cost. It's not new things.
That's right.
It's not an addition, so it's hard to know how much has been added.
And also on that sheet, the object 303, the second object 303, the OTPT services, that number should be 46,880. It's been reflected in this blue document. I just didn't change the white document. So that's not that cost is not 100,000, it's 46,880.
You mentioned grants get applied to that. Can you go over again which grants?
IDEA,
IDA.
excess costs, and agency placement grant. There's 392,000.
Yeah, the extra cost of all of that is part of special ed. And then all
Right,
the
that is part of special, that is formulated from special ed.
and then the IDE was all special ed.
IDEA is a grant for the paraprofessional.
And is there anything else that besides those two?
Those are the key.
And I think one thing to remember, if you remember in our budget presentation, we were talking about the funding of excess costs. Remember that has been level funded by the state, and we can see costs going up. And in the past, we've estimated that the reimbursement rate would be around 75%. This year, just because of the level funding, I dropped it to 70%, just to be safe and not knowing what was going to happen, because don't forget we're in a long legislative session, and I have no idea what that funding is going to be.
Is the 70 at or below level funding?
The 70 is slightly below level funding.
Okay, so it's a more conservative number.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is that naturally costs go up and the number of kids will increase, so that pool that's divided among those kids is going to be smaller on a per child basis.
Is that number 275, the IDA? Is that the number?
275, 338.
And these numbers that are on the, in our notebook, these are estimates, and how do they relate to current year numbers?
These are based, what we did is when we prepared the budget, we based this on actual kids and, based on kids that we saw coming our way. And we looked at past history. For example, if you look at neuropsychs were underfunded this year, so therefore we increased the funding to reflect what we thought the funding would be.
How much information do you have on the anticipated students coming in from the sending districts into 7th grade?
We're in the process of doing those PPTs now. If you would recall too, that if looking at past years, we've identified more students as they've entered grade 7. So that those are some of the unknowns as we go forward. And of course, there's always the unknown of who might move into the district or who might move out of the district. If you would recall, I think 3 or 4 years ago, we had 3 very expensive students move out of the district, and that had a positive impact on the
So do we have the current numbers of what we're getting for those 2 grants?
If you look at my initial presentation, those were the numbers that we started with, and if you look at page if you look at page 9 of my presentation, the numbers of the change from 14, 15 to 15.
Go back to the, no, page 9. What tab is that, Bob? In
23.
It's tab 23 toward the end.
Page 9.
Okay, the excess costs from the previous years.
If you look on page 10, Ms. Jacobson, excess cost for 13-14 was $434,000. 14-15 estimate $453, and $392 for 15-16. That's your estimate excess cost, grant?
Right.
And then you can see by the graph how it's been level funded.
So, going back to
And I believe with IDPA, they plan for, I believe they budget for what they have this year.
Okay.
They usually just budget, because they don't know what's gonna happen, whatever we're getting this year, they budget for next year.
For our projections, going back to your page 9, we're, it looks like we're even in the middle school, roughly. In the high school, we're up considerably, right?
Yeah, student count
That's
loss.
what I remember.
For the special ed enrollment.
Right, and then of course, Rich, the challenge with that is you can't do it based purely on student numbers. Because we could have one student that generates a cost of $50,000, you could have another student that generates a cost of $130,000 based on what their program is, so one student can make a huge difference in your budget number.
Yeah.
What object are we under, Jane, if we're in the current budget? What's the object code? Can you tell me or tell us where we are currently with costs in special education? Are we under budget, over budget? Does that show up on, because I can't see it on this report from last month.
Well, we're still probably over budget because we haven't gotten the rest of the grant in. We get most of the grant, we received most of the grant, it was $380,000 in February. And we expect another $100,000. But it all depends on if the special department has everything encumbered. And at this stage of the game, we start looking at the encumbrances for tuition students to make sure that they're accurate for the rest of the remainder of the year. But I really can't answer that question based on what we have. In that report, that budget report, I took into consideration the remainder of what we anticipate getting in the grant. We had some tuition reimbursements coming in that hadn't come in yet, so I took those into consideration.
So is it safe to say then, because I still have a difficulty with trying to understand special education as far from a budgeting perspective, because it's really hands-off, it is what it is. And I think to Rich's question, it would be helpful to know where we were last year with special education as far as the grants and the offsets, and what the percentage of increase was. I know it's, the state isn't funding it, but the taxpayers are funding it. So I don't think we do a very good enough job, or a good enough job, I should say, to educating our public to understand when you go to a budget and you sit there and say, okay, well, our budget went up 5%, and we all know that special ed is a huge part of that budget, and it's kind of hard to sit there and say that we don't have any say in it, because we don't. And I also feel that some of our other students who, nothing against special education, because it is what it is, but when you talk about textbooks and other stuff like that that our other children in the district can't get, I wrestle with that, with the two, if that makes sense.
It really does, because we took that into consideration. If you look at the graph that's on page 9 at the bottom of the page, you can see that, really just from the graph, 10% is funded by the feds. They write most of the rules. The state funds about 30%, and the local funds about 60%. So that you can see where that funding goes. And then, look at the chart above it. You can see, this is the latest data that's available, the prevalence rate. That's the number of students that are identified as special ed in each community. And I just give you a representative sample of some local districts. I mean, look at E.O. Smith, perhaps the most compatible to us. E.O. is the prevalence rate for 13-14 is 16.3. Ours is 12.4.
What I can do is I can break out special ed salaries. I can break them out separately and do the program side of the budget and compare it to last year's budget and last year's expenses, and that might help a little bit. Plus, that's 775 that we keep talking about, which includes salaries. That's gone down because I adjusted for substitutes, and I believe quite a bit of that was on the special ed side. So I can do that for the next meeting, do something that breaks out the special ed.
Well, I think it's, I saw that number, I couldn't find that number earlier, since you mentioned special ed substitutions. That was another increase, right? So,
And that's come down.
it has come down?
Yes, that's an adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can do the numbers part of it. I can't speak to the students.
No, I think
can't speak to the students,
yeah,
but I know certainly can compare those, the program and the personnel side, which, once you pull out personnel, it's obviously a different number.
Well, I'm not disputing the fact that we don't need, I'm only trying to equate it to say that special ed is an untouchable item on this budget. And where we seem to always cut in the past is textbooks for the other children. And I have a hard time with that.
Well, I think that's true of these so-called mandated increases. If you look at, you talk about the public not knowing the increases, but we're always trying to get to a 2.5–3% budget line. When 2.7% of it is mandated increases, whether it's teacher salary, whether it's benefits, leaves very little wiggle room to do anything else that we want to do. And I look at special education kind of like, teacher salary or something else, because there's not much we really can do about that. So we really have to kind of throw it to the side and focus on the other things that we do have control over.
But if nothing else, Manny, I think the point that makes sense is that as we're trying to ultimately present a budget to the 3 towns, and we have to explain our number and where our number comes from, the better we can explain, this is the chunk that's attributable to special education as a bucket, as a mandated pocket that we have to support.
I agree.
You know,
I don't think we
it's
do
gonna
enough,
make it.
enough of a good job highlighting those mandated increases and really what the percentages are, because, you know, everybody sees the 3.5% and they kind of freak out when they don't realize that 3 of that is really nothing we really have the power to do, because it's either negotiated or whatever the case may be. So I agree with you. I think we should do a better job of highlighting exactly where the different high cuts come from and what they really represent and what's really untouchable.
Right. So Jane, to that point earlier, yeah, I think it would help us immensely to see from a program level, special education, you know, comparative year over year, and to know where those increased drivers are specifically coming from, so we can articulate them.
Yeah, I can try to do some. I can try to do the number portion. Like I said, I can't speak to the students. I assume in this budget, they looked at each student and determined whether that's, let's say how I would have, when I worked with the special ed director in my prior position, we would look at the students, see who's moving on, see if at this time of the year, sometimes they have students coming in, so they would plan that student also we would have that student for the following year. The other thing, and I'm looking for now to see if they did that. I used to tell my special ed director to put in for 1 or 2 unanticipated positions, students coming in the district. I didn't even have that in here. So it looks here that this is just kids who are students that are servicing.
One of the things too is we're noticing an increasing number of students, especially these who are staying with us to age 21. And that's another cost factor.
Might off the cuff, about 2.5 of our 5.1% is the special education cost.
Bob, in factoring these costs, is there any specific impact connected to the expansion of categories that are allowed under special ed, in particular autism spectrum, and the new things that the legislature put in place?
I think the autism, we know, excuse me, there's an increased number of kids coming out with autism. You remember I referred to dyslexia earlier. That's another one that's coming down our way from the state. We have 2 students that are placed at out-of-state school. As we've been told, but we don't have anything definite, that out-of-state school is going to be closing, so that's going to create an ideal situation for us to try to get something in place. As I was speaking earlier with Mr. Jacobson, we just want to give it a try, because why not?
Right, but part of that increased cost we're facing is the ever-expanding list of what's considered or categorized under special education as well. I think the other question that I have is what expenditure driver are we seeing from effects of categories that people might not ordinarily be thinking of with special ed, such as concussions?
I think that you see some impact with concussions. I think that you see the most impact, the most budgetary impact with concussions is in the area of tutoring, because those kids need to be caught up with their IEPs. I don't have the number of concussions right off the top of my head, but I know that the number is increased, and there's some down in middle school too. And remember, I find this fascinating, the 3 areas for concussions, obviously football, girls soccer, because there's a lot of heading of the ball, and cheerleading. That's statewide. I mean, and cheerleading, because now the kids fall the pyramid's 3 high. Sometimes people fall in, and even though we have to practice on mats, fall from that high is still going to cause a problem.
Could we get a statement on what concussions occurred?
Yeah,
and what we're budgeting?
Sure.
For that, maybe some sort of categories of what's causing that. I want to be real high level.
Right, but
is it athletics or is it something else?
Right, but to that point, when you support or finance programs and certain areas. That's a cost that gets generated that's in a different bucket and may not be seen as part of the total cost of supporting the program.
But we need to get it correlated
Yep.
to the program.
Absolutely.
Is there anything in special ed that we're going above and beyond what we are legally required?
We try to do that on a regular basis, and sometimes there have been some disagreement with some parents, and this one that I remember, the youngster is going to graduate, but the parents want services until the youngster is 21. We're going to resist, but I'm not sure where that's going to end up. I mean, that's what I mean by burden proof. And unfortunately, sometimes you go into those hearings with both hands tied behind your back. And usually when we go to a hearing like that, we're represented by counsel, because we want to be sure that we're not, being taken advantage of and no stone is left unturned.
I mean, I guess to Rich's point, the thing that's important for us to know and understand is, if every dollar in that budget that you have presented is a mandated dollar of support, that's something that, if it's documented and backed up, that gives us our clear direction. If you say that 96% of it is mandated, but here's the 4% of the stuff that we're trying to do to provide the appropriate level of service for the students that need that level of support, then that gives us a place to have a conversation. So we just need to know, is every dollar mandated, or if there are dollars that aren't mandated, what do they consist of?
And we tried to do that, and one of the things we did, as you can see this year, we reduced the position. I think that's the first time in I don't know how long we've reduced the special ed position.
How critical is this middle school position going to be?
I think that what the middle school position, one of the things that came out of previous work is that looking at and I'm speaking about the former special ed director, he was just, he did something like 350 PPTs in the spring, and he was just running from post to post. And really, I think he needs time to prepare for them. I think he needs time to understand, to take the time to be able to have a good discussion with the PPTs, not worrying about what's coming down the road. And I think that it's such, just watching his schedule last year, you can see him being here at 5, 6 o'clock, and early in the morning. It just, the length of the day is incredible. We need to give that position some relief somehow. And remember that department head is going to be teaching 3 subjects, so that they'll only be free of 2 classes. Our initial plans call for those classes to be absorbed by other teachers. So we're trying to do it with no cost to or no impact on the budget. And the impact, I'm sorry, the impact would be the stipend.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Excuse me. So Rich has just found out that 2.6% of our budget increase is due to special ed. Can you tell me what the percentage is of salary of our budget? How much? Yeah.
Well, if you look at the pie chart that I gave you earlier, I hadn't broken it out by
Not for special ed, but just
by special ed. I just broken it out by the whole.
So you want to know the total increase, the salaries when they go?
Yeah, please.
If you look at page 3 of on that same tab, you can see that salaries represent 66.7% of the budget. Benefits represent 10.5%. Page 3.
Yeah, what tab?
That's 2020.
I got our total salary increases were like 5.9%.
Well, yeah, but
If you add up all the 100 items.
of the percent of the budget increase, though, how much does the salary make of that total budget increase?
I got 1.01% for the teachers' salary, portion of our 5.1% of it.
And remember, if you remember what we said about health insurance, our health insurance rates will go down because of all people being in the high deductible health plan.
So coming into this meeting, I was thinking that we need to bring our budget down to 3% or cut 568,914. It's just a ballpark. In seeing and hearing like the special ed costs, these fixed costs, our increase is 3.61 without even considering anything else. And what do we really want as a board, before we even go back down to like, let's cut line item type of things, what do we think is an acceptable percentage rate increase?
If may I just piggyback on what you're saying, if you repeat the budget target, I can work with the administration and prepare some cuts. But what I'd like to do is have a target that you want to work toward.
Right.
What I've got here, and I want to hand this up, is that what we did is we took the cuts that we finalized with the coordinators and any edits that were there. So if you look at where we were, we made some adjustments of about $167,000, and of that program was a programming cost of about $85,000. Personnel was about $82,000. So that, with these changes, we've got an operating budget of about 4.5%, so 4.5% increase. So that if we were to reduce the budget, we're looking at about $400,000 worth of additional cuts. So if you look, to give you an idea, an average teacher's salary, including health insurance, is about $62,000. So you take that and divide that in. I'm not saying that the balance of that would be any reduction in total come from the teacher's salary account, but that gives you an idea of what where you are. And then remember, if we make some personnel adjustments, teaching staff, we need to be prepared to pay unemployment. My recommendation, if we're going to do something like that, I believe in spreading cuts across the board so that there's no one part of the budget that feels the wrath of a cut. Because I think that when you look at the programming that we offer, I feel it's balanced. And therefore, that when we make reductions, I think we need to take a look at those things, take a look at impacting each program. I think another thing to take a look at is earlier I had given you the sheet of programs new to the budget. If you look at the white book, There's a handout beyond that. What I've done is I've given you a list of programs new to the budget. One of the things we would do is to examine that. It looks like this. So that what we would do is we would examine these to see how much, to see if anything is with past muster as we build to that budget target.
Now, on that list, one of those items is not currently in the budget, but am I correct that all the other ones are?
Which list are you talking about?
The programs new to the budget. Yes, football.
Programs new to the budget. These are not in.
The freshman sports are all currently in.
They're loaded in the current budget.
Some of them are either in the budget or they're listed in the recommended budget additions. On the second page of the blue sheet,
Yep.
when we originally first presented the budget. So for instance, the Schools, a career counselor is a recommended addition, desktop technician, special ed department head, audit compliance, and the rest in that. So I'm going to assume that the others are already in, it's the freshman sports, it looks like it's already in the budget.
Yeah, the math, I know is not in there.
Right, the math's not in there.
Is the one-in-one initiative in there?
Yes, it is.
And where is that exactly?
It's mixed into the bonding. It's mixed into the lease.
It's in the lease? Okay.
Yeah, in the email that I responded the other day about the lease, it was listed there.
Even that with the freshman sports, if that's the whole cost of boys basketball,
Yes, it is.
coach, stipends, transportation, reps, everything.
Yeah, we have another handout that has those costs in there somewhere. Right here. That's in the third line.
Before we get too far down the road on this conversation, I just want to make sure from an agenda perspective, report of administration, any other specifics on special education? I think there's follow-up that's going to be done, but let's get special ed cleaned up.
I'm glad you brought that back, because I wanted to just understand, I remember Ms. Neal's email, so we took a reduction in special ed of $93,000, correct?
No, we took a reduction in
Substitutes for, I'm sorry.
93,
Yeah.
the total was, hold on.
Total is 164,455, I think, per your email, right? It's object in the blue, 121.
Okay.
Second line item.
90,000 out.
We took an overall
93,117. So I just want to be clear on your emails a little. I had to read it a couple of times, but so the increase is 100. It's it went from 257,572 down to 164. I'm sorry, not the increase. The proposed budget.
The proposed budget.
257,572 down to 164,55. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
Okay.
So base it on, I went back and looked at 3 years history, is that what I said?
Yep. I just want to make sure that I was reading that correctly. So that's about an $80,000 increase from last year. So again, we have no.
Basing it on, I'm basing it on.
Based on our past history.
Past expenses, yeah.
Okay.
Compared to that budget, the last 4 years, that budget was about 80,000, 84,000 maybe, off the top of my head.
81,151. Yep.
And we did a big transfer at the end of the year of a little more than that. I think about 85,000, something like that.
So I budget on history.
Right.
Instead of attempting to budget on history.
That's great. I mean, but it is another, again, it's another substantial increase.
Well, I think it's better to have it that way than to say, oh, geez.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm not questioning
Yeah,
that. I'm just trying to articulate again about the special education and understand it, because it is kind of complicated. The other thing I noticed on here, object 563, there's another substantial increase of 209,000, which is the private tuition. And I'd just like to understand what, maybe Dr. Szymanski has to answer this question, or Ken.
I'm going to throw a guess out there, but maybe Dr. Smith. I'm thinking we have a couple of issues. We got the move in the budget, original budgets to the chart of accounts. So I'm going by whatever was in that budget. I could have the money in the wrong place. I mean, special ed, but I could have it in the wrong, different line for tuition, because there wasn't enough information for it. The other thing is, don't forget we're budgeted gross. Last year, they budgeted net. They took the excess cost out.
So the
This year, we're budgeting 500,000.
Grant's going to offset that.
So that skews the number because of the way, because we're doing a budget. They developed the special ed budget different than they did last year. So So until we get into one more year and do it in the same format, it's going to skew those numbers. So,
To clarify that, so that,
it doesn't help, but that's part of the problem why that special ed budget write-up is looks kind of unruly.
so that special ed line item in like the program budget of $4 million, that doesn't, that already included the grants for the last year?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Looking at it from a program point of view or a budget, the special ed line for last year had $44 million, 44.1. You're requesting 4.8. That 4.1, is that not, did that already have in the grants, that number, is what you're saying?
Yes, yes,
So the 4.1 from the 14-15 budget reflected as we're seeing it
excess cost.
is net. It's taken
Right,
out
right.
the excess cost reimbursement. The numbers you're presenting for 15-16 are the pure cost, not factoring in the revenue.
To the best of my knowledge, because special ed, developed that budget, but just by looking at it, that's, I guess. If you go back to, if you have your documents from last year, there was a summary sheet that I believe they used at the end of the year when they approved the final budget. And you'll see, and I can bring it with me the next time, but you can see under special ed, it shows tuition, and then it shows these adjustments for excess costs and the different grants. So therefore, the original appropriation in some of those line items is the net. But we're comparing it to the gross.
Right.
So but you gotta make the change, at some point you have to make a change.
And if you look at tab T, let's see, the third full-page thing into the special ed budget, you can see where we list the district tuition, and then you can see the special ed tuition for kids attending Bowlag, Manchester Regional Academy, and the Star Program. You can see we've got those broken out by kid and cost. Then if you go to the next page, you can see the private tuition, and you can see the schools to which we send students, the number of students, and the total cost. And that's that 812,000 number. Then, if you look down, just down below that, you can see we send 2 kids to the Curtis Blake School at a cost of $34,000 each. So that we've tried to break out the tuition by school, but not obviously at every time we kid. And so that's the way we've broken up tuition, so that you can see where the students are going, excuse me, how much each is costing, and that's where the numbers came from.
That information, that 2%, will now go to like 0.28% of the overall budget in special ed increase.
Because once you factor once you get them both, either both gross or both net.
Mm-hmm. So that would be a lot better.
Right.
So, I'm looking forward to what you guys have.
Yep.
This sheet right here that we've just gotten.
Yes.
Do you want me to explain it?
Well, can I just ask a question? How is it related to this sheet that's got all these proposed budget reductions? Because I see proposed budget reductions on this March 16th one.
Amy, I'd just like to pause you for a second there. I just want to make sure, are we done with special ed as a specific category?
I want to go back to the IDEA money.
Okay.
Because I'm still a little confused.
We will get to that.
So in this budget, it has $275,000 for IDA.
Okay.
On the beginning of the blue book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a projected number
Right, for the grant.
for the grant. So I thought I heard that you said that money wasn't in the budget. So this, you are taking $941,000 as a reduction in the budget to get down to 28 million.
Right, for the net number.
For the
We
net
didn't
number.
take it in the individual accounts, Joe. We only took it at the head end of the budget. So you could get an idea totally of what special ed costs. And those costs are reduced by the federal and state grant.
Most of the IDEA money, and Danielle can correct me if I'm wrong, most of that grant is for special ed aids. So you're not gonna see it in this section of the budget. So therefore, if everybody at this table is a special education aid, but you're charged IDEA, you're not, you are, that's how that works. The goal, and I think we talked about this during that audit review, is the goal is to really identify the people who should be charged to the grant, so that next year, if you're an IDEA grant, you're getting charged there right away. But the way the budget was developed, all the paras are just budgeted to the board. So therefore, that's why the IDEA is removed. But most of it is, I think most of it is, I think maybe there's $20,000 for, I don't know, now I'm talking off the top of my head. But most of it is, I believe, is for paras, and then there's a little bit of an offset in transportation maybe.
Okay, so the IDA is used for staff.
Pretty much,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay, that clarifies that. Two other questions on object 564. I think actually Dr. Smith just answered that one, the second one. So out-of-state tuition, again, another substantial increase. Is that due to another addition, I guess, more students being outplaced?
Again, look, some of that is attributable to excess cost, because again, that tuition is going to be, that tuition cost will be reduced by the excess cost grant. This is just what it costs totally to send those kids to school. So, Jenny said we got about 370.
There's an excess cost, we pay like for $50,000 and then they pay so much after.
That's right.
So that's less than $50,000, right?
The rule of thumb that I use, if it's above $55,000, they'll reimburse you. If it's below $55,000, it's your program. You have to pay for it.
We also have, regular budget, go ahead.
In your monthly board packet, there's a special education tuition report, and that has all that data in it.
Right, the actual.
So it shows how many children go to IOL, that type of thing.
But again, anything that we're seeing in that special education report that's part of our regular monthly packet is not showing the offsetting revenue. That is pure cost that we're paying out. There is an offsetting revenue, but it's not tracked down to this piece of revenue goes against this particular student at this outplacement.
Correct.
Right. Does that help, Joe?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on special ed? Rich, Amy, we good on special ed? Yeah. Okay. Amy, we will come to yours in item 6 on the agenda, your question, because I think there's a few more that came up from there. Bob, anything else?
Well, if you look at the March 2nd handout that I provided you, there's a memo from Mr. Coops, Mr. Logan, about the cost per sport.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it, unless more questions, really. And I think it would be really helpful to us to take a look if you had certain budget targets. You focus what those targets were, but then we could come back to you with a list and you could, vote them up or down and say, go back and do some more work. I think that would help us greatly. And as I said, going forward, we would take a look at programs new to the budget. We've got some ideas of our own, and then again, taking a look at all programs we need. I mean, sometimes people say, well, let's plan athletics for shot that and all athletics. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, look, let's just, everybody feels the pain.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. That moves item 5, there's no formal presentation, so now we're up to 6, which is discussion and possible action regarding the 2015-2016 proposed budget, so Amy will take your question now.
Thank you. So,
Want to explain the sheet too? Okay. I'm talking this cover sheet. Okay. I'm talking this cover sheet and the blue. The 2 blue pages that we got in the very first budget. Second page, good eye. So now on that second page of that blue sheet, you'll see the final proposed budget request of 28,226,787.
Yes.
Okay? Now you go to my white sheet. Second line down, superintendent proposed operating request, 28,226,787. Okay?
I have to stop you, Chief, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I couldn't catch up. So where's what blue sheets am I? I'm
Go to your front book. No, in the front of it.
I don't have a blue name.
You didn't put your book together.
I must have missed that one.
Here, I'll give you mine, I'll leave it, but you gotta give it back.
Here,
That's all right, I'll share.
Oh, okay.
I just want to catch up.
Okay.
I probably missed that handout.
No, it was-
It was in the book.
No,
That was a
that was
very-
a correction.
It was in, yeah.
Here it is.
The front of
Oh,
it.
oh, wait, we have one.
No, there we go.
Kathy says she
It
did.
wasn't in my book.
Even put holes in it for you, so you can
Thank you.
Okay, on that second page, right at the bottom, it says final proposed budget request for 28,226,787.
Yeah.
With the increases of 1.3, 5.12%. That's wasting. So now we go to the white superintendent's proposed deletions and additions. So the revised operating request now is 28,059,326. The difference between what the superintendent presented is 28,226. The adjustments are $167,000 reduction. Now I'm just gonna skip to, then I'm gonna go to the list, forget the rest of the middle part. So now, we met with departments. This is all in order of your book, so applied technology, I have the account number in there. So these are items that they're recommending as reduction, skip in anytime you want.
We have a new increase in there?
And then there's an increase. That was something that was not, somebody missed putting in the budget, so we're putting it in there. Okay? So that on your applied tech, the high school, the milling machine robotic arm, that's an addition. Okay?
that's where I was.
Okay? So, you just go down the list, all the things in parentheses are things we're removing from the budget. Anything that isn't, you go down to health, phys ed, basketball hoops and curtains, $300. Go to page 2. This DDS entry revised estimate, we had to add some money to the budget for that.
What was the line item before that?
I'm sorry?
The tractor, what name again?
Tractor is,
It was smaller.
the tractor is taking out the tractor that's,
Is that a motor? Right.
Well, when he was here, he asked me about the tractor size, and I think it was small.
the difference between, removed, the original budget number was 12,599, and, whatever you wanted to do to that tractor was not gonna cost 10,600. I can't remember whether it was buy another tractor or fix it, I don't remember,
It's a new tractor because
So-
we were told that the other one, if we would have rebuilt the engine, this could be in a transition, the other one would be about 5,000 plus. I got the estimates back in the office. And one of the things to remember is that small tractor cause problems for the groundskeeper when they try to, somebody else in the back, so we needed a bigger model.
So that's just a difference, we're not really removing the tractor, it's just a difference in the cost.
Can we get what he's looking for with the new budget, a new
It's a John Deere, I forget the model.
All right, so in some cases,
yes.
in some cases, you have reductions here that it's not a wipe out of the line, it's a
Correct.
reduction from what the original proposed budget
Correct.
was.
Correct. But there's probably more hard line reductions than something like the tractor where it was an adjustment. Let's see. So anyhow, that's how this sheet works, goes all the way down. So the grand total is a reduction of $167,000. So now if we go back to the white sheet, I broke those recommended adjustments out by program and personnel. I tend to deal in program and personnel. That's kind of how I think sometimes it helps to see that if you're removing something that has to do with personnel and staff or that type of thing, then I try to break that out. So your revised operating budget again is $28,059,000. Your current adopted budget this year is $26,850,000. So that gives you a new increase of your current year budget of 1.2, which is 4.5%. If you want to get it down to 3%, you need to remove $402,000 from the budget. An additional 402. I'm rounding too.
And you said if you wanted to take an additional what up?
1.5%. If you wanted your increase to be 3%, as Dr. Sminsky asked me to give him some numbers with 3%, you'd have to remove, somebody would have to come up with another $400,000.
Is that like reasonable at this point in time when we know that 2.6 is special ed and 1.01 is salary?
That 2.6 is no longer true.
Oh, it's not?
No, because of in the last year's budget, the revenue from the grants was factored into that number, where it's not this year, so it looks like a huge increase, but it's not. It's just the way we accounted for it.
What did you say?
1.2 or something.
Well, that's why it's gonna be helpful to have those numbers.
So, and there's another reality that we have to factor in when we're looking at this too. It's not just the bottom line number. So 4.5% is not 4.5% to everybody. So as an example, with the population shift, the town of Marlboro is going to see an increase beyond the 4.5 because they're going to see the 4.5, but as reflected on a larger percentage of the students. So if we stayed flat, if we did nothing, their levy still goes up.
If you want, there's an example of that, because if you go to PowerPoint, tab.
Right.
4 years ago. Excuse me, for the fact, what we've done is broken it out by town, and we try to do some comparisons.
I think we all understand that.
Right. Yeah.
So, because I
Page 15, by the way, if you want to.
For the levy impact, yeah.
I guess I want to be cognizant of the fact that we can talk numbers till Christmas, and when it comes down to the time of the motion, we're going to get it shoved down our throats if we don't come with a collective agreement of like how we want, what our values are. So I'm not sure, as a good use of our time, like what's the best use of our time to talk about individual programs and whether we want to cut a line here, a line there, or do we want to talk about where do we want to be? Where we want to be, because I mean, I don't necessarily like all these reductions that have happened, but I mean, there are a few things that I would like to see happen, and how they want to cut, I guess, is their business.
I think that there's a couple of pieces to this. So first of all, excuse me, as of today, we're not at this 4.5 because we haven't formally done anything with this recommended list. We're still on the original proposed operating budget. The formal process as a board is we're going to have to discuss if we are reducing lines, what we are doing. So it's going to be a form of a motion to make a reduction. It can be, yeah, I mean, we have, as a board, we have the opportunity to do it however we want. We can take this and you could have one motion that says to accept the superintendent's recommended reductions to the budget as presented. And if that passed, then all of that will be part and parcel of it. You can literally, pare this down to say there's only certain things I'm willing to support and those are the things I want to make a motion for. But until we as board members make motions to get the discussion on the table about what we're doing from a cut perspective or an increase perspective, the budget sits where it is right now. I think this was the last round of Q&A, right? Yeah, so we've now talked to all the departments as of tonight. We've talked and had a chance to have Q&A with each of the departments about their budgets.
We're not done next week, we have some.
Oh, what do we have next week?
Yeah, tech
Oh,
ed.
sorry, tech ed.
Yeah.
Okay, is that the last one?
Do you have technology come
Okay.
back?
And technology's supposed to come back.
There you go.
Right, right.
So we're not done.
So we have one more meeting where there's still Q&A to be able to discuss the budgets with the individual department heads. But that doesn't preclude us from the departments we've already talked to. If there are specific things that you want to talk to in making budget reductions or changes, we certainly can discuss those.
Well, we're going to include next week to go over the capital part and maintenance.
I've included 100,000 in there for maintenance, and if you want to fund the capital, it's how you want to carry it. You want to carry that as a referendum item separate from the budget. You want to include it in the budget. And I think that those are valid discussions that need to be had.
So,
Because if you add the capital, then this 4.5 number goes up and there's further reduction.
So, Rich, what I would say is, yeah, we absolutely, under discussion possible action regarding the budget, can discuss the impact or how we're going to handle that capital piece of the budget. I mean, your call if you want to discuss it now, or, I mean, my thought would be it would make more sense to probably do it next Monday, A, because I think we're going to have more board members there and we'll have a better discussion across the whole board. But B, if you want to get a decision made on that, knowing that coming out of this meeting, I mean, kind of gives the board a heads up saying, hey, be prepared to discuss that during the discussion possible action next week.
Yeah, well, when we talked about it 2 or 3 meetings ago, we talked about coming back to address some of the maintenance and the capital things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, if next time, does that make sense to do?
I can bring the list and we're ready to discuss it.
Have you come up with a recommendation yet for that, for both the capital and the maintenance?
No, I haven't. I think that I was looking for some number of items before I started, because remember, there were some things that, we've got the $72,000 that was from the audit, the encumbrances, et cetera. In the past, in some years past, we voted to put that in the non-recurring capital fund. We can do that again this year. Where does that stand? Then with the 100,000, we've got some money left in this year's maintenance. We've begun to take a look at the nets. I just got the proposal from the engineer today, and I want to review that. I got the proposal from I'm waiting for a proposal from the company on the hot water heater, from a company on the hot water heater. One of the things that we're taking a look at is that if the tank that's there now is a 500-gallon tank. The firm said that we can get $400-gallon tank. It's somewhere around $5,000 to $7,000 cheaper, and they promise recovery. I said, let me see the engineering calculation so we can ascertain if they're on money or we're just whistling in the wind. So then, with that said, then we've got the balance of the money that's left after the netting is put up, so that we can do some of those projects. So we're trying to, I think some of it's dependent on where those things settle out as to how much money we have left to do projects. I know that we probably have somewhere of maybe less than 50,000 to do some of the small projects. The question is which ones of those to the same way.
Some of those are probably in this document as add-ons.
No, they're not.
The bell clock system and
The PA.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
So it's something we might be able to get done.
That time, this is a good segue, I guess, to this, because I thought I read in Jane's report last month that we projected surplus. You had 194, was it 194,000?
It was 197.
Right. Hard to guess, but I guess, but it was a.
But they spent some of that money too, that night.
We did?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we bought the,
How was that?
we bought the, what thing?
And I've got some personnel.
Wait, whoa.
That projected?
That
down.
projected number, you're saying now that that number included this SRO money?
Correct.
Because that's the money we spent, that the board authorized, was the SRO money.
That's right, that was part of that 190.
That's part of that surplus because we haven't spent a dime on the SRO. So if she was looking at a bottom line net number, projecting out, taking into account encumbrances and everything, here's what we've committed to for expense, here's what we know we have, here's what we figure for revenue. By the end of the year, we anticipate ending, if we did nothing else, call it 195.
Yeah, but why would you do it? That wasn't explained in your explanation. You didn't say it was SRO. SRO money to me was a separate line item. That should not have been, in my understanding of it, I thought you had an additional 194,000.
No, and
Why would we be?
I don't know why the SRO money was considered a separate line item. It's a line item in the budget. And if that's what it was supposed to be, I was not aware of that.
Security, it's like security, right?
It's a line item in your $28 million budget. So.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now that we know that information, so now we have 94,000 roughly.
So if you, let's see, you had, in the maintenance budget, you had a balance of 81,000. I
Which we
projected
spent.
that we were going to spend that. I in essence set aside the 81,000. That's what you bought the net or the.
Right, the
net,
offsetting
the
that,
net.
yeah.
So you bought the net from that, so.
And we estimated, I think, 50, right? I think that's what the board approved.
I think they
50,000?
48.
It was 48 plus engineering.
Plus engineering.
Plus engineering, right.
So then, you also approved a transfer from the SRO account to
For the hot water here.
the hot water.
But that's part of your 194.
But that's, that, right, because she was looking at net numbers.
Yeah.
So is there any other things that we might be concerned about for this year?
I've got a couple of
Other
personnel
couple of
issues that I'm concerned about. that we need to do something with. And, I just need to address them.
Budget?
I'm sorry?
Like that's gonna impact the budget? Sure.
Board
The
service.
impact, you can go on back. We know when you're there.
Alright, so how have we paid for the snow removal? Have we?
Have we paid this? Of course we have.
Okay, so how,
That's the
like,
thing,
how do we
Robert.
do that? Like how,
If
it's
you-
73,000.
It's, that line is in a deficit, but there are other lines that have surpluses.
I see.
Are there any major surplus lines that we should have appropriately adjust in this budget?
Say again, are there any major what?
Major lines where you're getting money from that we should be adjusting in our next year's budget?
So you're saying, are you
No,
asking?
I don't.
I was gonna say, are you asking, there's a line, are there lines in there that we're seeing as significant surplus now where we should be adjusting next year's budget down to reflect our actuals?
Well, if you look at that sheet, I adjusted fuel oil.
Right,
Went from 110,000 down to, so there was an adjustment in that recommended reduction for fuel oil.
right, of almost
Probably
7,500.
when we, hopefully it doesn't snow again. And I'm hoping we can, the current PO that we have sitting out there for the snow removal, I'm hoping that we can reduce that, so we'll pick up some money. That's how I manage the budget. So I'm hoping to pick up some money there.
The challenge is you've got a drop of 7,500, 7,600 in fuel oil, but you're anticipating a $4,400 increase in electric, so.
Yeah. So.
only other suggestion, if you could give me a target, what we can do is propose some cuts and as on this proposed reduction sheet, we can make the budget down.
For a 3% levy increase.
Can I ask another question on the short-term investment fund money? I know on the last report it was like 34 and change. Can you explain to me how that is calculated and is that money available to use?
I don't know, can you help me? I don't know.
We used that as a budget offset in the past. We picked it up $5,000, budget offset. And what that is we put it in the STEEF fund, and it's a state investment vehicle. And I don't.
Short-term investment fund, yeah.
Right. And we accrue whatever interest we can, and with interest rates so low, the interest we earn is minimal. I mean, back 4 or 5 years ago, that account was, we were generating $250,000 in that account.
Well, my question is, it's money that's available, right, to use? What is
The
it?
money that's in the STEEF fund?
Yes.
No, that's not, because what happens is that, remember, we bill the towns as if the teachers get paid on a 21 pay cycle, because they have to give us all that money by the end of the fiscal year. But some teachers elect to have their pay spread out over the summer, and that money we're investing in STEEF is the money that's owed to teachers during the summer.
So the principal that sits in that account is paid out
It's paid out.
in payroll over the summer
It's
months.
usually paid out by August 15th.
For those teachers that elect 26 pay periods as opposed to 21.
Which are the majority of the staff.
It's encumbered, it's paid out.
And that's why that investment fund is so important to us. Just because.
Because before, if you were to sit on that money and then pay it out over a longer period of time, you could make interest on it. Now it really doesn't matter.
I mean, this in excess of a couple $1 million when the fiscal year ends.
Right.
Okay, well, I just saw it on the balance sheet, that is, it's a revenue.
Oh, the 3,500 is the revenue. I wish it were bigger.
Yeah.
Needs to be bigger.
Yeah. Okay, so that money is the money for the teacher, so it's not available income.
No, it's not available money at all.
I thought it was an interest-bearing account that while we're just generating interest, why are we spending it?
Well,
I think
that's
it's
fine.
money that came in from the towns and hadn't been spent and things like that.
Okay.
What happens to the interest in that account?
We look at the budget, we use that as an offset in the budget. We estimated it to be $5,000, and that's.
So you do show that as revenue in the budget, from the budget perspective, but you show it as a $5,000.
Like excess cost, it reduces the levy, but right now it's just so minuscule.
It's not going to move the number.
That 5,000 is down to 3,000 by the way.
Yeah. Additional items that we want to discuss?
I just say,
Over the budget.
he keeps asking what we look for a target, I would say a 3% levy increase. Next time I say it'll be 2 3/4.
Yeah, no, I think we need to know what 3 looks like.
Okay. What we'll do is, for the next time we meet on Monday, we'll put some things together that we probably leave the budget at 3%.
And just to let you know, 4 items: teachers, tuition, oil and gas, and transportation.
Yep.
Gives us an increase of 3.69%.
Yep. So how are you gonna get to 3%?
That's what he's going to try to figure out.
We will lock ourselves in the room. I see 2 gentlemen in there who have boxing gloves on because they'll say cut the honest budget. And we'll come up with a compromise.
It doesn't mean that's the net result. It just means that we need to know what that number looks like, and then we'll be making decisions based on what's there. Yes to this, no to that, you know?
I mean, then we can present you a list.
Right.
A concrete list, and then you can say, almost like you did last year, you know, yes, no, and no, I expect these things to be handled the same way.
Actually, the way it worked last year, it really didn't work
I'm sorry?
for us. A couple of us, the way it was handled last year didn't work for us. Oh, can we consider the parking increases, the revenue, increased revenue as, I see that, I don't know if that is proposed, but you.
No, Amy, those are only suggestions. I
Right.
haven't included any of those in the budget.
Can we-
You might see some of those after we talk them through. You might see an increase in athletic user fees. And that's what I mean about spreading the cost out. I mean, I don't think that there's a segment of the population that, or the segment of the program that should go untouched.
Right, but this is where this conversation gets really tricky, because in these special meetings around the budget, we've got to focus the conversation on the 15-16 budget. And yes, this stuff impacts our decision-making, but we can't make decisions relative to things like, are we going to change user fees? Are we going to charge for parking? Like, those are things that have to be discussed either at as a designated line on a special meeting, and we're going to discuss that specific topic, or it has to be part of our regular monthly meeting.
I would disagree in that it has exactly effect on our budget. So I would think we could talk about it.
If parking is an estimated revenue of $20,000, if we wanted to do apples and apples, we could be talking about freshman sports and parking, or whatever, however we want to do it, it's one for
Or you
one.
could increase that, an example is you could increase the athletic user fee to
Right.
cover the cost of freshman sports. And I can tell you now that the freshman sports, for the most part, are covered by user fees, paid by the kids who participate.
Then all the other sports aren't, like, at
Oh,
all,
right.
because we've just included.
In fairness, they're not paid by the students, they're paid by fundraising.
Right, by other revenue sources.
I mean, I know, for example, freshman football, they also pay a user fee, but I know there's an alternative that helps pay for the football team. So I think that there are a number of vehicles that are used.
Right.
Well, I know you didn't have in that document, for recommendations is the increase in gate receipts. I think we should be considering that. Just to start collecting on all those people that don't pay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the advice there, Bob, is if we're trying to get to, if we're talking about a 3% number and how you get there, look at this revenue side too.
Oh, absolutely.
And certainly the board would be wide open, I think, to your guidance in terms of, hey, in order to get there, if you're telling us that we've got to, change user fees, that we've got to change parking, that we've got to change whatever, these are the things you need to do to get to a number.
That list of possible areas was just to stimulate discussion.
Are these numbers correct though? With I'm going to ask this is the only blue sheet, right? Okay. So these numbers, like for coaches, it's another big number. So again,
Gross, John.
thank you. All right. So that was the question I was going to ask.
Same with advisors.
Okay.
Sorry.
But
Yeah, because last year they would have netted out, user fees last
You
year,
know where I was
right?
going. But now the other thing is, just so I have the clear picture, again, we have an offset of 120.
Let's see.
120,000 for user fees, right?
105,
120
athletic,
something?
yep, and 10 for club. And gate.
It was 105 for athletics.
It's the famous it's the little blue sheet that Kathy just gave
Yeah.
on the first page.
Yeah, I was looking for my notes, I tallied it up, I had a number.
Yeah, athletic use fees
120,
was
so it is,
105,000.
yeah, 105 club fees and gate fees, right?
Gate receipts, right.
Correct.
Those are the only three numbers you're using as an offset. And that would be, those numbers would be offset for salaries for coaches, correct?
Correct. What I did, in fact, in the last budget projection, because we pulled some of those participation fees, I think we pulled I brought 55,000 into the budget, and I split it 85%, 15% to clubs. I think in the budget last year, they put it all towards athletics.
Put it all toward athletics,
But
right.
I did an 85-50. And, yeah, the next round of money I bring in, depending on what account is deeper in deficit, that's where I'll put that, whatever money. But you have to remember, all these projected revenues, if they don't come in, I think we have $130,000 projected revenue for this coming year, the year we're in. If we don't bring in that 130, that's gonna take away from that projected balance I have. And that projected balance is exactly that, it's a rejection. I have, departments and principals now sending in purchase orders for things that they still need, even though there's still a freeze on.
Do we know what portion we would have collected? I guess
It's too early for the spring sports.
Yeah, too early for
That's the
spring,
biggest one.
yeah. Couple weeks in the winter.
And I
And
think
if
clubs
we don't
at
get
this-
spring sports going, that's fine.
Yeah. Spring sports start in June.
I mean, I think at this stage of the game, clubs are done, clubs are done.
Clubs should be done.
If you haven't collected, I know, clubs run all year, right?
They do, yes.
So, pretty much, I would think, any club money we're supposed to be getting, we've gotten.
Do we collect any money for the music, things like jazz? Do they do a user fee?
Ticket sales?
No, user fee like a club, like.
No, because those are curricular. It's actually illegal for us to charge for those because those.
Jazz band's actually a class.
Yeah, those are courses.
They earn credit.
Just like a math class or an English class, those are courses.
So if we
They get credit for those.
if we gave Jim credit for all the athletics, we would have to supply all that.
It's different giving credit versus a course that the school offers. That every student has to have equal access to all of our courses, so by law, you're not allowed to charge for the courses that we offer.
So if we needed to, we could potentially reduce some of those courses and make them clubs.
I don't think we can do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
That'd be-
Then you're totally messing up NCAA, you're messing up colleges.
NCAA.
Yeah, that would have
Yeah, I
a
mean, we
potentially
kinda went through this
detrimental effect on.
15 years ago, some people said, what do you mean
Yeah.
jewelry making and stuff? But, all those people that end up signing up for another class.
We have
Unless you have to have some
Those
before you
classes
go.
after school, Scott?
Only jazz band. And that's only because the teacher and the students can't physically schedule it during the school day.
Because there's no capacity in the schedule.
No capacity.
And then don't forget, some of our classes are limited by the size of the rooms in the state hall. For example, science labs are limited, so that we have to be careful what numbers we put in there.
I did do some looking at the number of sections and the number of teachers, and part seemed like we were rather heavy. And we actually have someone leaving.
I think one of the things we'll be looking at, and we're just starting to get some preliminary numbers from the schedule so that we can start to take a look at those things. And take a look at class, excuse me, class size, teacher loads.
In one of the books I read, looked at yesterday, there was a section I couldn't find about teacher vacancies that we had. That's what I was mentioning earlier. Do you know which book that is?
Blue book. We're 16, I think.
I listed the shortage areas.
Yep. So that was, I was going 16, and I thought there was, that didn't seem right.
Is that the salary thing?
No, that's a salary, yeah. I was looking for, there was probably 6 or 7 teachers, or positions, I'm not sorry, teachers, but positions that you had labeled as vacancies or shortages.
I think hang on, let's go at it 2 ways. For example,
So I would think that we'd want to look at if there's, obviously not filling those vacancies is an
I
offset
think,
possibly in
but I
class
think we need to
sizes.
be very careful if we go at it that way. For example, the number of people taking English is not going to decrease, but the number of people who, to use Richard's example, taking art may decrease. So those are the things that we have to look at. There has to be a balance. The number of kids taking math won't increase, but if we have a vacancy in the math department, we have to fill that. So those are the things we need to look at. Special ed, that's something we need to.
Well, I guess that's not a question. I guess you are looking at all of that as far as.
You
If
only have
you
one
look
person.
at tab 10, Joe, in the blue book, you can see the scheduling calendar. So that's something we'll be using. Then if you go to the back, if you go to the tab 21, page 18, list the teacher shortage areas. Places where we're having a difficult time getting teachers. Bilingual education, special education, intermediate administrative, mathematics, language media specialists, science, speech and language pathology, technology education, and world language. Those are the places that we have difficulty getting people.
But that doesn't mean we have openings in this stuff.
No.
Right.
That
No,
means-
it means if we have to fill it, you're gonna have to look at an increased cost to bring somebody on.
For example, in one of our classes, we have a retired teacher who's teaching in a shortage area. And the state law says I have to pay her max salary. I can't pay her step one or negotiate something else.
So these are teachers that we need, the positions are, we're short teachers in these positions.
Statewide, Joe, not.
Oh,
not-
statewide, oh, okay.
Statewide.
There's a higher demand than there is supply in those categories.
Okay.
I was trying to understand the coaches line. We have we went from 62K last year to 235K. 120K was the pay to play offset, gate fees.
Mhm.
There was about an 8% increase, I think, in their salaries. So that was another 6,000, and then freshman sports was about 7,600. But it left a delta of still 38 high, and I'm wondering where that came from.
3,800 or 38,000?
38,000.
Now, this current, did you say this current year's budget is net of the issues?
Right.
I can't answer the question because I didn't develop the budget for this current year.
I can give you the backup for that 235 number if you'd like. What I did was take the contract, the teacher's contract, and just in Excel spreadsheet, added it all up, and that's what it is.
Okay.
Now, they could have done the budget differently last year. They could have developed the budget based on, is there are the coaches, are they on steps as well?
Yeah, the coaches are on steps, so there might have been some turnover for
So
coaches.
they might have
Most of the
spun that out.
coaches are all on period, though. They've been here for a while.
That would be the answer.
I don't know what the difference is, I just know how I did it this year.
Mhm.
I didn't do it last year.
That also might mean that we might have some more money from this budget, underfunded line item.
I guess
That's
the
the
thing
way
is,
that very well could be. I think at this stage of the game, probably all the coaches have been paid except for spring, so all we can do at this point is determine who are the spring coaches and.
I was gonna say, if you could do a projection on the spring coaches.
I haven't even written contracts for some spring coaches yet, so.
Oh, that helps.
That's my best guess, I've never seen anything that was, how the coach member was developed last year. It's just, when I was trying to come up with original appropriations, they're just flat dollar amounts.
Yeah, it was a 0.59% of the 5.1%.
I'm glad you're doing those numbers, I don't do them on the fly.
So, and obviously some of it was the freshman sports, but there was more to the picture. Right, the 34 is a lot more than the $4,000 for
Rich,
freshmen.
that's one more thing I could lose sleep over. Coaches.
We can take out some of it this year, next year.
The police, we seem to be, I sort of interpret it as double billing. Our police costs is going up, yet in theory we have money for an SRO.
You have, helping out you guys, you have people to patrol the parking lot. You have police services for the dances, the concerts, the,
Basketball games.
and
football
then you
games.
have
The prom.
graduation, all that stuff. You pay a state trooper to go to the prom, correct?
Yeah.
So,
What is the increase? Where is that line? Police. $353 object. We went from 15 to 29.
what happened,
353.
oh, sorry.
So we have a 198% increase of 19,260. So I'm wondering, what are we offering, or what do we provide them that we didn't provide this year?
I think that,
Was that the morning?
well, you have system-wide, the 8,500 is system-wide, it's probably to patrol the parking lots in the morning. That was never, but that probably was never.
That wasn't budgeted.
That wasn't budgeted
Yeah,
last
I know
year.
the traffic
I'm
study.
budgeting it for it next year.
But that is one item we should be able to knock off quickly, because we could have been paying it out of SRO. Oh, who would be doing that?
So the SRO would monitor the parking lot in the morning before you,
Yeah.
well, then, there you
I
go.
think those are the things we need to take a look at. And you've given us some guidelines of 3%, and then we can start taking a look at some of those things. Then with Mr. Watts, one of the things that we were doing in the beginning, we weren't sure where that SRO was going to go because of acceptance by the town. Because if you recall, at the budget meeting, we were against it. And what we wanted to be sure of is that this was their minimum. So I think that there are some things that we can take a look at. And
Realistically, 3%, the SRO has to go.
I'm sorry?
At 3%, the SRO is gonna have to go. Right, we're gonna do, at 3%, that's getting rid of teachers and other positions, but we'll let you go ahead and do the exercise. It would be physically impossible to get to 3.0.
Well, again,
without reducing.
That's what we need to
that.
see, right? So.
That's what I said when I presented that sheet. If you want to, you have to reduce, you have to go in personnel.
And what it does, Rich, is it gives us the information we need to make some sound decisions. And the sound decision is to say, just to maintain the service that we provide today, to maintain the things that we do, the number's gotta be, making this up, 3.69.
What the pain
And
is.
here's what goes into it, at least we can put that out there to the public when this thing goes to
Yeah.
vote, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
You
sense.
know?
I have one on the advisors. If we could, it's gone up about 31% on from last
124.
year.
Project
124. So,
Is that a net versus gross thing?
No, because last year they applied all of these, including activities against athletics. So it wouldn't have had an offset for user fees.
So-
If,
go ahead.
I don't know all of that was offset, now that I see this number. Because that makes no sense. It makes no sense if that budget's up that high. Which one?
Advisors.
So.
Because we
there
haven't
could
had
be-
clubs, we haven't, generated
There
additional
could
costs.
be, there could be an offset there.
Okay.
Well, there could be an offset, or,
Well, my first question, I guess, would be, obviously you recognize the numbers is substantially high, and then secondly is, in advisors, is that part of the, I'm gonna assume it's part of the teacher's contract, right? So they got an increase of 2.8%.
8% in the
We
stipends.
increased all the stipends.
The stipends went up.
No, stipends were for coaches, right?
No,
Is that-
no, advisors and coaches is the same thing.
Oh, they were so good.
They suffer from the same thing. We go decades without increasing.
Right.
Okay, so that was an 8% for,
And I did the same thing with the stipends as I did with the coaches, so we just added up what was in the contract.
okay. But even with an 8% number, that's still
I
pretty
know.
high.
Unless the original appropriation wasn't.
Okay.
the same thing.
And then I need some clarification on object 127 for the 6th assignments. These numbers didn't equate based on what I try to tally them back into the white book. So if we could look at those numbers too,
Well, the 6 assignments includes all of the labs. We have academic labs, science labs, and all of those labs are included in that line item. So the number can't match the weight, the salary grade that I gave you. Okay.
What Kathy's referring to is that by contract, if a teacher covers an academic lab for duty, there's a stipend that goes with that because it's a study hall. It's a guided study hall where they make contact with the parents. They, work with the student, with their teachers, and follow the student's progress. With the science labs, some teachers may teach 4 classes, but they may have 6 labs. So they actually teach more than the full load per contract, and so they get a stipend for each lab that goes above that.
but the full load is 5, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we have a list.
teacher who teaches 6 periods. In other words, we have overflow. I'm thinking of, Mr. Ruddock's program. He has a 6th assignment because of the number of kids who are in his class.
Well, that's the other thing. I think that's what you're originally looking at. It's like engineering has a 6th assignment, business has a 6th assignment, and they're really to keep those programs afloat. But then I think what Kathy mentioned is really the ancillary things that aren't in the other book.
You're not going to see it broken out as a.
No, I'm talking about, this is special ed, the numbers that in object 127, it's not the,
We do have 6 assignments.
well, there is 6 assignments there in your labs.
It's just because of the nature of the special ed student.
Okay, so, but the number went down substantially for the high school 6th assignment labs. And is that correct? Because I thought we had an increase in another line item.
We reduced our 6 assignments going into this year. We made cuts. We cut a 0.3 English teacher or a 0.6 English teacher, and we reduced other 6 assignments.
but we can take a look at it.
Yeah, so we took a
Look at it
hit
again.
coming into this year.
And
I'm
see.
assuming that's pretty
Make sure.
in flux due to.
It's pretty fluid based on scheduling and, yeah.
Number of students, what they want, so the 6th assignments you may need from year to year.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent because
It has.
Project Lead the Way,
Mhm.
Dave Ruddicks has had a 6 assignment for years. We simply don't have enough. We have too many kids who want to get into engineering. The business program for Ever in a Day has had a 6th assignment. We have way too many requests for business. And then the other ones are for the AP, for the additional AP courses in world language and social studies.
Isn't statistics?
And math and the additional AP courses in mathematics.
Is there a report on all the 6th assignments?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one of the things you need to remember is that they float from year to year based on scheduled numbers. So a teacher might have a 6th assignment one year, but that might not have it another. There are a few consistent ones who are
Inclusive of the auditorium.
And what's in the budget is
Yeah.
based on what's occurring this year.
This seems to me 6 assignments are good for us. We want to see that number stay up there.
It's certainly more cost effective than, potentially hiring another full-time staff or less than a full-time.
Part of our dilemma in cutting, I mean, on one school of thought is, well, the 6th assignment is where you should cut first because you're not reducing any staff, full-time staff. But the way we have it set up, you're going to create catastrophic impact on some of our most important programs, engineering, business, AP.
And you don't get the financial gain from cutting that.
Well, I don't know, it's about 9,000 per 6th assignment, so it does add up, but at a significant
remember,
cost.
there's no health insurance involved.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no ancillary cost, so,
Right.
if, for example, if you had 6 assignments spread through the math department, that's a math teacher, and we've been able to not hire that teacher because of, then there are no health benefits or any of the other fringe benefits. So we've tried to do that as much as possible.
And the other thing where you might pick up some money, but you can't determine yet, and I'm not going to say what we budgeted for. But you have, well, when I finish with Central, you have to now certify that you're still in negotiations with. So we put a number in there for the negotiations, so.
Yeah, you made assumptions on whether it's
made
still
assumptions on that, so based on the assumptions, we're either going to pick some money up or it's going to cost us.
And if we don't settle this year, that'll carry on as an encumbrance until that contract is settled.
On that subject, on this document you gave us tonight, personal certified staff, reduction of 82. Okay, what's that?
That's for 25 psychologists and speech person.
It's right on it's on page 3, where it says personnel. You have the subs, the reduction of the psychologists, and then we had to increase an individual salary because they're.
And those recommendations are from the department head?
The 2 reductions were based on conversations with the department.
I had one on object 426, just an increase of $1,920 for food service disposal. We didn't have anything budgeted last year.
That's because you're paying half the back all the way. The grease, grease. Goes to pig meat. It's supposed to pig meat or, jerk, the high guy. It wasn't budgeted, so you have to pay to have the grease removed. I think that's pretty much the disposal cost.
Was it in maintenance before or somewhere else?
Turn it to biodiesel itself.
So we're trying, the things that we found, the things that Michael found that, we're paying for this year that were budgeted, that, so I sat with him and said, let's get a budget and let's get it in the right place so that it makes more sense. And also next year it'll help to pay bills appropriately, it just helps the budget.
So that's one where the expense would have been buried in another line, but not
It
evident as to
could
what
have
it
been-
was.
Right, could have been in another line, or it could
Right.
never been budgeted for, anybody was just hoping that that was gonna evaporate.
Disappear, yeah.
Can't we get one of those converters, put it in the garage? Or actually make it a science experiment and we'll have the students have it.
Tech Ed's gonna have a biodiesel plant.
I have some other ones that I've really put, I mean, I don't want to take up, so if anybody else has any, go right ahead.
Ask away.
All right.
Did you guys have
That
anything?
would be August.
Yeah,
Increase of, for object 430 for HVAC repair maintenance, $9,000 increase. Explanation on that, and if that's a pretty substantial increase, if it's based on repairs or is it based on a service contract? If it's a service contract, I hope we're bidding it.
I can tell you $5,000 it will cost to rebuild the electric motor they gotta replace in there. That's pretty low.
Most things go by bid policy. You have a policy bid for free quotes. So I'm not gonna allow anything not to be not bid unless I recommend the superintendent that it gets waived. So,
Good to know.
8,000 would be 3 quotes. But, what was that object code?
430, second one from the bottom, Jamie.
430.
8979 is the increase.
The 8,000?
Yeah, $8,979 increase. Second, just one of,
Page 14.
It's on page
14 and 26.
That's what. Oh, HVAC.
Yeah.
26, 28. Let's see, 26, 28, 7,300, 430. Yeah, 35,000 for annual repairs. Automated building system, 9,400. Controlled air. These are usually contracts, maintenance contracts, and ongoing contracts. That's my best guess off the top of my head from my facilities background. But we can get more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a culmination of different items. But.
Well, if they're hitting us for an increase, you know, obviously I think that would be a perfect time to go out and get competitive quotes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. We had a reduction in fire safety alarms just for facilities reasons. I'm asking this question. I guess it's a good reduction, almost $2,000, but why the reduction for fire safety?
I'm going to guess that he, based on what he paid this year, it might have been over budgeted last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And golf rentals, 3,000. We're reducing the budget there.
I can't answer that question. What do you know about golf rentals?
I assume it's your fees, Scott?
Yeah, that's the fee. Yeah, I wish. It's proportionally related to a handicap. So it'll be increasing significantly. Yeah, that's the.
Is that a cut?
Let me take a look. What line is it?
440.
It could, and it could be, yeah, because they rent a van, probably. I'm guessing, right, Scott?
Or is it the fees for the golf team at Towson or Flex, or is it Howard?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the rental fee for the greens.
They don't rent a van? They don't, how do the kids
No.
get there?
I don't believe that's a van rental. I think that's what it is, but I'd have to, be easier enough to follow up with that.
What's it under? What's the budget? Is it under
It's,
athletic?
it's golf rentals,
So is it high school athletics?
440.
It's just high school golf.
It's, Jane, it's right next to the gymnastic
Right.
rental, which is the rental fee for, I think, for Patty Dunn's.
So, yeah, the 3250 for gymnastic rentals, the rental of the space of the
Yeah.
facility for,
Right.
so that's gonna end up being green fees.
Maybe
Yeah.
another over budget.
I'll bet well, it almost looks like last year they didn't have it broken out between golf and gymnastics. It was all possibly all.
Lumped into one.
You're right.
That could very well be.
This darn new charter town.
If you look at both.
It's,
I just want to make sure, it's not, we're not cutting.
Yeah, that actually looks like, it may not have been broken out, and Jay
We just
broke
had
it
a
out
rental
this year.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I saved the best for last.
Oh, boy.
501.
Telecommunications?
Yeah.
$28,900.
$33,000 hit.
Say it again,
$33,848 increase.
that's right. That's because the voice, that's the telephone system that was budgeted incorrectly in this current year. And plus your, plus E-rate.
I was gonna say, there's an E-rate offset on that,
There's an
right?
E-rate offset, which is,
So that would
which
have
is
been.
like excess cost and all the others, the offset too. So there's an E-rate offset, but there's also E-rate has gone down.
And that line is going to continue to increase because for the next 5 years, the amount of money we get from E-rate is going to
Right.
continue to decline.
We're only gonna get like 14,000 next year from E-rate.
Who provides that?
Federal government.
That's-
If you look at your
that's-
phone bill, it's the universal access charge.
It was the service fund. Which we've been paying for a couple years.
So I guess I don't understand the
So-
substantial increase. I mean, what are we getting for that increase?
We didn't have to buy a phone system.
Conference calls.
I thought we bought it on the system.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We bought a phone system 2 years ago, right?
40
No,
grand.
remember, some of the phones, so we didn't have to buy the big switch gear. A lot of the phone system is being housed off-site. We need to pay for that, because that's a rental charge, and they provide the internet. I don't remember the breakdown of it, but I know that one of the features of it was going to be hosted off-site. And then therefore, we didn't have to buy a piece of equipment that would be outmoded in 3 or 4 years.
Is it power school, is that part of that line?
Power school will be different. But, so, I mean, I'm hearing a couple of things. One is, last year's budget would have likely bundled the E-rate income against the expense, so there's a piece of it. A piece of it is that we under budgeted last year for what the actual expense was, what we actually had to pay out. The second piece
Oh,
of
there's
it.
another one here for software, under budget that one, about $30,000 increase.
What's that one for?
502.
Yep.
That might not, but that might not be under budget. That might be new software this year.
So page 17.
502.
I'm just looking at the big dollar increases.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
page 17. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up from the total.
Not all leases are up every year.
Other admin software.
Is that the NWEA, or what is it?
How much was it?
That's
That's not that?
school net. And what happened was we received credit from Power School for school net. Now we have to budget for it.
But the good news in Power School, I got an email today that, from a colleague that CREC is looking to host Power School. And so CASBO members are going to try to negotiate with CREC to get the price per, I think we now pay $4 or $5 per student. And if we buy into CREC, I asked the IT guy to look into it, if we buy into CREC, we're gonna try to get them down to maybe $2 a student.
So looking into it as a consortium, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so.
That would help a lot.
I did notice with our offsite, now the emails come throughout the week rather than all night long, one night.
One big dump.
I know we don't want to talk about the main stuff, but I think we need to give Bob direction. What do we do? One, we have the money from the bond, and my idea is that we put that into the capital. I don't want to see that cross the general budget. And then the some of this stuff has to be done by law. So how do we plan on, how do we want to do it?
Well, so I guess the question back to you starts. So if you take what you looked at as your 15, 16 expenses in the capital budget.
It's not a tab, it's the separate sheet that was emailed to us as part of the information shared 2 weeks ago.
And there are some things in that budget for next year, the software, school did, we can't capitalize the software. So that's, I left that in, and I think it was one other small salary amount.
It was something that could be capital.
You don't capitalize
Right.
the software, it's only $3,400, and there was
Right.
another one that was already, and I think there was one that the number was, way different than what was in there, but.
It's hard not to get into some of that, but we definitely need to come up with some rules of what gets put onto this capital and what should we just put in general maintenance. And I think as a board, with their help, we have to come up with some guidelines for that.
We can work on it.
Right, in terms of what makes sense to that as part of the capital plan versus not.
Right. But there's some stuff here that, well, just all the ADA stuff and the fire safety stuff that there's no way of not doing that.
Well, one of the conversations that was held early on was the fire marshal. They said as long as there's a program you got to do it, he would accept that. So I need to have some more conversation with him.
Yes. But keeping in mind what they're asking us to do is something that is very vital to the safety of the.
Oh yeah, it's rooted in public safety.
Everybody.
I mean, I put that one's really high up there. It's so high, it's right above the doors. So I don't think that's something we want to drag out for 10 years. And then the ADA stuff, we've already dragged that out to a point where this is it, right? We'll start paying penalties if we don't have it done.
Well, the ADA compliance stuff either is spread across the next 2 budgets or it's all loaded in the budget for 16, 17. That's it. I mean, those are the only 2 options. It's either split across 2 years or it's all done in 1 year, but the 16, 17 is the drop dead on for that whole amount.
Yeah, we would have a problem with pushing that. And then, did the PA system get moved in? Because there's another huge safety thing.
That's in the recommendations. It's not, we haven't voted to put it in,
Okay,
but it's in his recommendations blended with his reductions, so.
And remember, we've got some of that money left out of that 100,000 for maintenance this year. We spent about 149. We need to to take a look at what projects of those we can finish off.
Get done this year.
Get done this year. And some of them might not be done until school gets out, just because of logistical reasons.
Right now.
Well, we can encumber the commitment before the end of the year, as long as we know what we're doing.
Well, we have a list of about 40,000 on the current year budget that isn't budgeted. At least in this.
And see, one of the other things is we don't know where the bill is to Senator Olson to fund repairs to the parking lot, because that's going to have an impact on some of the things that we do over the summer.
Right, but I don't know if we
Can't bank on that.
I don't think necessarily right, we can't bank on it, and
Right.
even if we get that, we still have the 175 that we need for the field ADA work.
No, but I think that, planning leaves that a little gray, because of, I know we're gonna have to do some things over the summer. The question is how far do we go?
Right, well, we have to decide in the next week what we're gonna budget. So we can't leave it too gray.
I guess, Bob, what we need is, we need, I would want direction in terms of knowing what you know today, at this point in time. Here's what I would foresee completing between now and the end of the year, within what we have left for budget available. Here's what I would propose you put into the 15-16 budget, based on the capital plan. And here's what can be put off to 16-17, knowing what that impact is going to be. Because to Rich's point, and I agree with it, we have to be careful that we don't shortchange this year and cut so far that when we go to do a 16-17 budget, we're forced to do $500,000 in capital in that year's budget because we didn't split it up across 2 years. We ate it all in 1 year.
No, see, the way I'm seeing it is that we need to do some of the things for the traffic pattern, and to minimize those, because those are going to be must-dos, because we don't know if we're going to get that money. And then to see where we go from that point on.
So,
What does that mean, Bob?
In other words, there are some raised speed tables we need to put in. How many do we need to put in? Where do they go? Take a look at that. And I think that that's where we need to be with that. Is there any, I think we're okay with signage. I know that the sign out on Wall Street is part of the proposal coming from the senator. To try to do some things, work with the state to relocate the crosswalks. Those are some things that we can do that will be of no cost. And then to take a look at the projects that we've got out there that we had identified this year, and try to complete as many of those as we can. Then come up with a list for next year based on what we can do this year.
Are we still talking about taking money to in this year's budget to facilitate traffic? The speed bumps, i.e. speed bumps, more speed bumps?
Yeah.
So where's that money? We didn't budget any of that money from last year. Where are we gonna get that money from?
Well, that's in that 100,000 for maintenance. That's the only place I can see it.
We're down to 55,000 for capital, so that's it. Plus you've already spent 20, so that's $75,000. Plus we talked about all these other things, and I thought traffic is going to go into its own bucket when it comes down to this proposal with Senator Osteen. I don't think we were prepared to spend any more money on traffic out of this budget.
If it doesn't come to fruition, then I have to take it out of next year's budget.
I think until we get approval from the state, we have to cut back on what we're doing in that area.
But no, I don't disagree, but I think that there are some things that we have to do. For example, the speed tables. Do we want to go again with the rubber speed bumps? There were the rubber speed tables were recommended as being able to withstand plows. Well, you get a blizzard, you get a payloader in there, things happen.
But we can revisit how we do that. We can get rid of them for the winter. We have those speed bumps that we took up.
Yeah, we're going to put them back April 1st, by the way.
So, technically, realistically, we could probably get away without spending any more money on that if we had to. And I'm thinking we have to not spend any more money on that stuff.
If there's a place we don't have to spend it, we can't spend it.
Right, and then the other thing is, do we really need the police officer down there? I don't think we do, not from my trips past there at this point. But that's, I guess, not the subject for this meeting. Other than,
Well, I just think that we're talking about, obviously making some cuts.
But when you talk about that 100,000, we already spent like 20,000 on concrete repair, so it's really 80,000?
80 and 55 for the nets.
Yeah.
55 for the nets. So there's your
There's
70.
really not much left.
That's what I'm saying. Now you got $25,000, and we weren't anticipating spending any more money. At least from the facilities, we weren't recommending spending any more money on traffic until Senator Ostin and this whole plan came together. If it comes to fruition, that's great, but we've already spent $24,000 on traffic studies and speed bumps, and to Rich's point, I mean, where do we stop? Maybe we made the wrong decision in the type of speed bump we bought, but I look at that as, I mean, it's water over the dam, but I don't know if that was the right move. Maybe we should have taken those tables up there in this winter time. We could put them back down, but I mean, they were damaged. And to Rich's point also, we still have the smaller ones, right?
Yeah, they were not for the winter.
Yeah. So I think we have some options there without spending more money on traffic until we really have a built good plan laid out for the board, full review and for funding it, so that would be my 2 cents.
some of the other things on that, we had that track sealant that we stripped out of the budget this year, and a pickup truck that they really need that pickup truck. It is going to cost us more in the long run if they don't have it, because they're driving the dump truck everywhere where they shouldn't be, but it's going anyhow. So what do we tell them to do, guys?
I only have one comment. I have no problem with performance money through the queue.
We know that.
And let me see if I can put some things together based on the conversation this evening and come up with a list, and then at least it'll be a firm basis of discussion.
Now, have you talked to Mrs. Olston on the 175 ADA stuff?
There was a possibility that might be able to be rolled into the traffic money, and that's the last I've heard of it. I haven't touched base with anybody.
My conversation with her is she thought that might actually be able to come out of the Fed.
That's a school building assistance. If you look at it.
Well, no, it's the ADA part that makes it maybe apply to the Fed. So I would encourage you to touch base with her again.
My first conversation with the state on it was that it's a project eligible for school building assistance, where the state would pay 60% of it. But we have, as I understand the bill, we have to appropriate for that 40%, have that, and then there's a series of motions and steps we need to take before we can go forward with this to get it on the list. I think I showed that.
So if that's the case, then we're gonna need to look at that 40% in the 15-16 budget, or in next year's budget.
Yeah.
That's gotta be a number that's in there, because we would have to appropriate it to be able to move forward. So the number has to be in there.
She's coming to the town hall, I think it's next week, the meeting. So maybe somebody.
But if there's Fed's money that can get, I'm all for that.
So there's about 7K that we've gotta come up with. If we're doing it. So let's make sure that when you're coming to us with the recommended adjustments, this is factored in. The capital plan is factored in, the things that we need to accommodate in next year's budget tied to that or factored as part of your decision-making process. Other items for discussion?
No.
Anybody have any proposed motions for action on the budget?
If you want, we can do this recommendation. It's really up to whether Bob would feel comfortable with us starting there, or we want to wait for the whole thing.
Meaning starting with the recommendations he's already given us?
Yes.
I'm not sure that makes sense. If he's going back to the well to look at a 3% and what that total looks like, I think we're probably better off waiting to see.
I understand.
But I understand that. Okay, well, then, hearing none, we'll close item 6, and we'll move to item 7, public comment. Any further public comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. I'll get a motion by Amy, second by Rich. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We are done.